This is Brad A. Milford with the Unlimited Business Wisdom Podcast, where business owners, yes, they share their wisdom, right? It's short, to the point, to respect people's time. And because we know transforming possibility happens really fast and it leads to lasting results. So, as you've heard me say, enough of that. Let's get to it. Question number one, we have a special guest. In a few sentences, share with me who you are and what you do.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I am Evan Johnson, and I am a podcast host and producer. My own podcast is called Path to Podcast Success, where I highlight unique and interesting entrepreneurs in the world of podcasting and in the broader world of entrepreneurship. What I do is I am a podcast producer. I have a podcast production agency where I help coaches, leaders, and other heart-centered entrepreneurs start, grow, and maintain their own podcasts, as well as I take over the production of an existing show so that I can help those entrepreneurs use a podcast to grow their business, because I might be a little biased, but I love podcasting.
Indeed, you do. I know that to be true. You know, I've been wanting to do this for a long time, so I won't totally do this to you. But I've been wanting to say, after that question, like in a few sentences, tell me who you are and what you do, right? And someone give their name and tell me, and then I want to say, no, you don't, and just listen to the response. But I won't do that to you. You had such a great response. I was almost going to play a practical joke on you, but I won't. I love your answer.
I appreciate the idea behind that joke. I think it's funny.
Someday, for anybody listening and watching, it will happen. Someday it will happen.
Oh, yeah.
No, Evan, I appreciate you, and I know that you walk the talk, and that I've had the opportunity to be on your podcast, which was amazing. Thank you. And now you're here. I love reciprocity and how this industry goes round and round, and so the quality of your podcast is great. So anybody listening and watching, after you're done with this podcast, I encourage you to go listen to his. But we'll get to that. Right now, we're going to get to some business. What's the best thing about being in business, Evan?
Oh my God, the best thing about being in business. Well, I just really want to quickly say, you said that you liked my answer to that first question. And I want to say that I appreciate you for that, because that took work and time to really hone in on what I do and who I help and how I can say that, eloquently. So thank you for acknowledging that. And as far as the best part about being in business for me, I say it all the time, and it might be cliche, but honestly, the relationships. Truly, because that is what I build my business on entirely. I try to build a business based on invitation and referral only, at least at this stage, and all that comes from relationships and being genuine, with them. And so that is my favorite part for me. I could dive deeper if you'd like, but that is, I love building relationships with people on my podcast and having really exciting conversations. And growing and nurturing those relationships, frankly, and it's very rewarding.
Love it, and I mean that sincerely, truly love it. I know I say that a lot, but I mean it a lot. Relationships. In this podcasting world, relationships are so powerful, and so I'm not shocked or surprised to hear you say that. Nor am I shocked or surprised to hear you say that you work primarily on referral at this stage. Those are all great things. I mean, social selling, relationships, it's such a powerful way to go about business today.
At the end of the day, that's what all businesses are built on, is relationships.
It's true. There are some struggling owners who don't quite yet get that, but the faster we do, the better off we all are. So I love your answer. It's great. Relationships are key, no doubt about it.
Thank you.
Question number 3, Evan. This is my favorite question. For anybody listening or watching, you've no doubt heard me say that. We hear from other business, it just gets me charged up. We hear from other business owners. They're getting so much business. And yes, it's true right now. In the world, all over the world, they're getting so much business that sometimes the chaos of that causes a little bit of overwhelm. Would you be willing to share your thoughts on that, Evan?
I would. I thought about it a little bit before we jumped on, and I love that question. It's a very interesting question. First of all, it's a pretty good problem to have, I feel like, at the end of the day. Better to have surplus than not enough, but it is
Mhm.
still a problem nonetheless.
Mm.
I'd say my two main points when it comes to that. Point number one would be you've fallen into the trap. Someone in that position has fallen into the trap of saying yes to everything. And that is not. There's a lot of power in saying no. And I have learned that. I've had my own experience with that. All entrepreneurs see that at some point because the allure of that extra money or whatever it might be is always very powerful. It's very difficult to say no. But if it's not in your zone of genius, shout out to The Big Leap, by the way, Gay Hendricks, amazing, fantastic book. If it's not in your zone of genius, don't do it. So there's reason number one people will be in that problem is because they are saying yes to everything. And reason number two is because they are afraid to outsource. Now this might be a little I might be a little bit biased as someone whose business revolves around people outsourcing stuff to me. But at the end of the day, it is true that when you get to a certain level of business, you need to outsource everything that's not in your zone of genius. Because other people, their zone of genius is, not what yours is. So you need to outsource those tasks to them. They can do it better than you, they can do it faster than you, and they let you focus on what you do best. And so if you keep both of those things in mind, I feel like if you learn the power of saying no, and if you are willing and open to outsourcing, even if your business is your baby, right, which is the case for most people, if you are open and comfortable with outsourcing, then that problem I feel like can be very easily avoided. So those are my thoughts on that.
For valuable answers. I'm so with you 100%. And it's actually really deep value. And I know it's shocking and surprising to some of us seasoned business owners who look back and say, wow, why did I hold on to that for so long? And then for the new business owners, they're like, no, I can't quite let go of that yet. And so it's interesting. And this topic does come up a lot, but it's always valuable because there's always somebody listening or watching that can stand or sit to receive it. Very valuable stuff. Like saying no is much more. I know there's a lot of cliche answers out there, and there's all kinds of quotes about saying no is more important than saying yes. But it's because it's so relevant, because it's so true. There's some
I
valid
found the
reasons.
more cliche it is, the more true it probably is.
Truth. And then outsourcing is so powerful. And in the world we live in today, I'm not sure why people wait so long just to even test. Just test it. Give it a test, right? Okay, I'm going to take this small little chunk and I'm just going to test outsourcing this and see if it frees up my time to be in. On this podcast, we say zone of brilliance, but we'll roll with the zone of genius. I get it. People listening, they know what it is. But just that's out of humor. But the same thing. So if that frees up time for you to focus on your zone of brilliance or genius, then it's a wise move. And there's only one way to know. Test it out. So great value. Thank you very much, Evan. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Moving right along. Question 4. This is fun. What other successful business owners like podcast masters like yourself should be on the Unlimited Wisdom podcast?
I love that question. I really, really do. I think it is an incredible question. It shows that you're coming from a genuine place and that you're really looking to truly showcase others. And I can see that through your questions, and I love it. Well, I can't name drop every single person I've ever had on my podcast, even though I might like to do that, because they're all incredible. I will interview people that I want to talk to, similar to yourself. If I had to name a specific person, though, I would say my mom, Mary Catherine Johnson. She is in business as well. She works a lot with online businesses, course creators, e-commerce businesses, etc., doing a lot of really powerful work in the world of conversational marketing. She likes conversations and relationships just like I do. I come about it with podcasting. She goes about it with marketing. But she can talk about her stuff better than me. But she got me started as an entrepreneur. She taught me how to edit a podcast. And so I gotta give back, gotta bring it back. So Mary Catherine Johnson, she is who I would recommend.
I love it. You are definitely the first person who has just shouted out their mom with regard to business. I've had some shout outs from on other areas of the podcast, but this is great. I love this.
She got me started. She's been an entrepreneur my
Kudos to
whole
you.
life.
I celebrate you for that. That's a great way to go. I love it. That's great. And it'll be a pleasure to reach out to her. So I look forward to having her on. That's great.
Yeah.
I love it. All right, let's get to some wisdom, Evan. What do you think? Dig it.
Yes.
What piece of wisdom would you share with other business owners from your perspective?
Honestly, and I'm sure this comes to no surprise.
No,
for
lie
anyone
to
that I'm
us.
going to say something like this. uh, don't focus on relationships. No. But so if I'm not going to lie, then I would say do, actually. I mean, like I said, I know everyone's probably expecting me to say it, but honestly, focus on relationships and do it in a very, very genuine way, because even if you don't have a client-based business like me, and even if you're really just deep into other more standard marketing strategies, which is fine, you can always find time for relationships. I personally do that by inviting them on my podcast and doing exactly what you're doing right now, which is highlighting and showcasing them and giving them a platform to shine and know that they are appreciated and seen by other people in the entrepreneurial community. And I think that is incredibly powerful. And then I really try to be as genuine as I can and care about the people I talk to. And I always like to, one fun thing, because I'm big about actionable advice. One fun thing that I have done that has helped me to stand out, I feel like, and has really helped prove my genuine stance when it comes to this, is I send a thank you card, a handwritten thank you card, to everyone that I have on my podcast as a guest. I ask for their address, and if they are comfortable giving it to me, I send them a handwritten thank you card, just expressing my appreciation for them coming on my show. And so things like that, and you can be creative with it, but find a way to be genuine and put others first and be a go-giver. Shout out to The Go-Giver by Bob Burg, another fantastic book. Just do that. Find a unique way. Find a way that you can take, the spirit of that book and the spirit of what the title represents, Go-Giver. Take that and run with it. That would honestly be my main piece of business advice. And also start a podcast. Podcasts are awesome. I love it, and it's a great way to do that, to build relationships. So there's my little
I love it.
plug there. I gotta throw in podcasting. It's what I do, but it all comes down to relationships. So there's my advice.
I love it. Great advice all the way around. Kindness, being genuine, being authentic, building relationships. It is shocking and surprising to me that how many people this escapes. But in the world we live in today, in the market we live in today. So you mentioned marketing a little bit. In the market that we live in today, that old 1960s, 1970s approach with the spray and pray and the outreach messages, like slamming people with links and stuff, that just doesn't work in the market that we live in the world that we live in today. It's a whole different world. So
Yep.
I really, it's simple advice, but it's very powerful advice. People still, this is a conversation that still needs to be had on a regular basis in many, many industries. So I celebrate you for what you're sharing. We're going to dive in a little bit more to the podcast. Before we do, though, Bob Burg is one of my favorites. Hit that book. So I just really want to highlight him for just a moment. Just quick, because you mentioned him. The Go-Giver is
please do.
Gem. Is a gem, and I have literally bought that book for probably 100 people, clients and different people, and shared that. It's such a gem of a story. So anybody listening or watching, if you don't know who Bob Burg is or the Go-Giver book, I highly encourage you check that out. It's such an easy read, but it's such a powerful story. So Evan, thanks for bringing that up, and thanks for giving him a shout out.
Oh yeah,
again,
that might be my number. If I had to narrow it down to one book to recommend to business owners of any stage, that would probably be it, or at least be a very, very strong contender.
Yeah, it's a great book. And the Go-Giver Leader too. This is the newest version of that, but it's great. It's great stuff. Now we're going to get back to you. So thanks for your shout out to Bob Burg. Podcasting. Let's talk about that because it is such a wonderful thing to create some relationships around, right? And so I'm really interested. Now, you've been doing this for a while, and you meet a lot of people. What are some of the benefits of podcasting? What have are some of the advantages for a person in business to begin to start to podcasting? Just share from genuine stuff from the heart, if you'd
Yeah,
be
yeah.
willing to. What are your thoughts?
Well, there are a few different ways you can go about it. I think it depends on the type of business you have. I'll talk first on what I am most acquainted with as a client based business. So, if you have a client based business, a podcast is an incredible way to A, gain a foothold in the marketplace, right? I mean, it's the same reason why you might write a book, right? We're talking about Bob Berg. There's marketing he has just because he wrote a book. And same thing, you have a podcast. If someone is looking to work with you or someone in your industry and you have a podcast, they're going to see that and they're going to think you're an expert on that subject because you are enough to have a podcast about it. So, number one benefit is it really, really establishes you, the host, as an expert in whatever your field is, whatever the topic is. And of course, what I've been saying, it is my primary strategy to build these relationships. That is how I break in. That's how I break the ice, I guess you could say. Because if you reach out to a random person, so like you, Brad, that's how I connected with you. I think what you're doing is amazing. I think you're a very, you're a big figure in the world of entrepreneurship and you've done impressive stuff. You have an impressive resume. If I just randomly reached out to you and was like, hey, Brad, I think your stuff is cool. Can we talk for an hour? Like that, it's a little bit weird, right? You might not say yes as readily. But what I did do was I reached
Indeed,
out
that
to
is
you.
true.
Yeah, right? Yeah, yeah. But what I did do was I reached out to you and I asked you to come on my podcast. And you said yes. And it accomplished the exact same thing. I got an hour of your time where I got to pick your brain and have a fun conversation. And here we are. This is a relationship that I have with you that I love. It is amazing. You're one of my favorite podcast guests. Don't tell any of my other
Thank
guests.
you.
But
That may have just
that's what I.
slipped out into the public domain, by the way.
Oh! But that is. That. Honestly, that's my. I would. I want to recommend. I think everyone should start a podcast. And I know everyone in their business says, I think everyone should insert the service I provide here. But I'm tired of saying otherwise. I think everyone should start a podcast if they have something they want to say and if they want to have these powerful conversations because it is an incredible icebreaker. Like I just said, it created the relationship that I have with you. And I got that through hosting a podcast and having you on. And so and then that leads to referrals. I mean, you have people, that you have for this already, but a lot of the people I have on the podcast, maybe they don't have a podcast producer themselves or they don't have someone that they know who's a podcast producer. So if they are looking for that service themselves, or if one of their friends in the world of entrepreneurship talks to them, oh man, I hate doing all the work on the podcast, I'm going to be top of mind. And there's a referral right there. And so I think that it's an incredible side effect of building these genuine relationships. And the podcast is a platform that I found is the best, at least for me, and I think for most people, to generate those relationships. And it works for, even if you're not in a client-based business, it's still, and even if you're doing solo episodes and not even interviewing other people, it still has the value of being like a book in that it establishes you as an expert. So that is I could talk for hours about it, but that is just what I would emphasize the most, and that is how I have been able to find incredible value from a podcast.
Love it.
Yeah.
This is a great conversation. I really enjoy this conversation. Relationships, authenticity, kindness, a way to reach out to people, calling card. It's great. And I want to go back to something you said. When we do reach a certain level in business, look, as entrepreneurs, we want to serve deeply. The best entrepreneurs out there, it's all about service. It's all about creating impact and influence in the world. Many of us are aspiring, at different leadership levels and all this stuff. But there is a target market. So when you reach a level in business, you kind of stay stuck until you get to a target market. So whether it's CEOs, whether it's coaches or it's speakers or it's podcasters, or to be the best at business, we've got to niche down. I mean, that's just a reality. Anybody refutes that is a little silly. And I'd love to have you on my podcast and we can chat about that. But I mean, to niche is really to help, to help us scale, right? So if you know your niche and you have a podcast, then it's a great way to reach out to people. But I still, let me go back to that comment you said about, hey, if somebody wanted an hour, am I done? I still get these messages, and I imagine you do too, Evan. And they say like, hey, I'd like to pick your brain. Can we go to lunch? Or, hey, I want to, I'd like to reach out to you. Let's hop on a call. But there's no intention about it. There's no reason, there's no compelling reason for me to take an hour and hop on a call. And I, as a business owner, am not going to hop on a call unless there's an intention behind it. I'm a little more directive than that, right? And so this is a great way to get in front of your ideal audience, your clients, your specific clients, who you're trying to reach. Or it could just be, maybe it's not business oriented, right? Maybe it's something that you're just really extremely enthusiastic about, right? Or, just a hobby of yours that you're just really passionate about. And so I love what you do, Evan. And I love how you frame that up. It can be powerful in business, but it can be a powerful hobby as well. So
Very
do you
easy to
have
start a
people,
podcast. Anybody could do it.
yeah. Do you have people who it's more hobby based, or is your clientele mostly business
I
people? Curious.
As far as my personal clients go, they're definitely more business people because I mean I'm a producer. I charge money to produce a podcast, and if someone is doing it as just like a hobby, unless they have a significant income, they're probably not going to. And I'm not just like there's like wrong with these people. I'm not just like a Fiverr guy who you don't really meet or talk to, and you just send the podcast to, and they charge you $10, and then you move on. Right? I'm a bespoke
Those don't
service. I
usually
really
turn
work.
out too well.
Yeah, and you get what you pay for, and I'd like to think I give a very high quality product. I do a good job. My team does a great job, and so I charge the amount of money that you would expect for something like that. So I typically don't work with hobbyists because they probably are not going to be as willing to spend that kind of money on
Oh, we
a
got to
on
put you in
producing a
touch with some
podcast.
$1 million hobbyists, my friend.
Or hey, if they're $1 million hobbyists, hey, if Jeff Bezos wants to start a podcast on woodworking, then I will. I'm sure he would be more than happy to pay my fees. But I typically work with with entrepreneurs who have a business or a podcast associated with their business in some way. But I've talked to plenty of hobbyists. And I think it's incredible, and I'd love to work with those people because there's a lot of passion there. That's just they typically they might not be as willing to spend the money, but hey, that's not a rule.
Love it. All right. One more question. Well, there's a couple more questions. We're going to get to the fun question here in a second.
Right.
What's the biggest lesson you've learned so far, the one that jumps out to you, from doing what you do, Evan?
Well, I've kind of already talked a bit about it, but I'd say the biggest lesson I've learned from being in business and from being a podcaster, honestly, it's just it's the same thing. And the importance of
It's awesome.
relationships, honestly, it truly is because I've been through. I'd say the importance of relationships and clarity. I'd say clarity would be if because I want to try to throw something else in there besides just relationships.
Hmm.
It would be clarity because relationships are great, and it's great if you want to start a podcast as a way to build these relationships because all those people reach out to you wanting to get to pick your brain, get an hour of your time. Well, I got that right, but what did I do differently? I invited you on my podcast, and but you have to be clear, right? If I just said, "Hey, I have a podcast, will you come on?" You probably wouldn't have done it. But I was clear on what my podcast was about, what we were going to talk about, why I wanted you to come on specifically. And so you have to be clear on what your podcast is about, why you're doing it. And it was a journey for me. We've all been on that kind of journey where it's like, well, what do I want? That was historically one of my biggest struggles was like, what do I want to do? What do I want to be? Um, and so clarity is very important. It's the kind of the companion piece to this. Otherwise, relationships are incredible, but if you really want to take advantage of that in the world of business, then you need to have clarity. So that will be what comes to mind in this moment.
No, that's great. So this is an important point. So, and it's okay to have the same answer throughout. There's a strong theme to relationships. I love it. There's no harm in that. I dig it. But I am seeing something here that's really important that you're showcasing. So if we were to call this how to reach out to your ideal client, that would be kind of a marketing type title, but
Right.
podcasting would be a great way to be able to do that, wouldn't it? So,
My favorite.
and you need to be very clear in why. So I'm actually glad you said this. So let me be candid and honest. Unlimited Business Wisdom is probably not the best podcast name in the world. It's very general, it's very broad based. But I was very specific about what I wanted to do with this podcast. So if you're listening and watching, hey, look, you get some truth. I wanted to be in front of more business owners. So I used a general term. But if I wanted to be in front of CEOs, then I might say, the greatest leadership CEO podcast in the world or something, right? Or, you know, marketing,
CEO
precision
success.
marketing. Right. There you go. So being clear in who you're reaching out to and why you're reaching out to them is very key. And there's a lot of people that just aren't quite clear. So I'm glad you brought that up. It's not that they're not clear as a person. It's not about their personhood.
Right.
But you said in the beginning, we've kind of come full circle. You said in the beginning, when you shared who you are and what you do, that it took you a while. That was like, I liken that to peeling back the onion. But you said you spent time, you spent effort in peeling that back over time. Isn't that the case?
Oh, yeah, yeah. No, what my answer, right? I help coaches, leaders, and other heart-centered entrepreneurs start, grow, and maintain podcasts. Blah 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 blah. That succinct statement. I mean, a year ago, if I was in your podcast, my answer would not have been anywhere near as clear. And honestly, unlimited business wisdom is like a definitely a better name than some other names I've come across. So like, don't. You said that it wasn't the clearest name. It is. Trust me. It's good. It's a great. It's a fantastic name, actually. So yeah, but that's yeah. It did. It take me. It took me a while to learn that lesson. To really be comfortable niching out, because there's a little bit of mindset blocks around niching down. In the beginning, because then you think, well, what about all those other people, right? They'll pay me money. They'll give me money for stuff, right? Like no, if you focus on a specific person, yeah, that might be less people on the planet who you're trying to make, get to give you money, but they're more likely to do it than if you just focus on everyone. So, yeah,
Love
that's,
this.
yeah.
I love this. Thanks for just being honest and authentic. Did you,
Yeah.
did you, we're going to talk about your favorite vacation here in just a moment, but
Yeah, no, yeah, all
you
good.
said basically a year ago, you weren't as clear. Did you just keep drilling down, drilling down, drilling down? Did you test, test, test? Was it through the relationships and people giving you feedback? How is it
Yeah.
that you think you got to a strong niche?
Well, first of all, honestly, time was the main and most important factor of that. Time for me to kind of get my mindset right and just to be able to be with myself. And it did take time for me to realize, like, it kind of is. It's like the overnight, not success, I guess, but the overnight realization that happens after years, right? It did. Eventually, I woke up and I was like, no, you know what? Podcasting really is what I want to create in the world, and that's how I want to make an impact and give back to humanity. And I'd say so. Time's number one as far as kind of how I got to that realization. Otherwise, you have to be really mindful during that time about yourself and what you want, and reading books and consuming content with purpose. Right? Don't be like the serial reader where, oh my god, I read a book a day. Like, okay, well, come on. You read a book a day. I can't imagine you could actually implement
Are
everything
you
you learn.
dogging me right now?
No, it's fine. Reading is great.
I'm just
Do it.
teasing you.
But for me personally, right, if I were to read a book a day, how could I possibly actually implement the things those books tell me to do? Like, I can't.
Good point.
So, read books. One other book, though, a recent book, You Are the Brand by Mike Kim, I believe was called. Great book. It really helped me with find some of this clarity on these specific kind of how I word certain things, right, which is really important. And other books like The Go Giver and The Big Leap are great. Like, so to be strategic about reading these, consuming this content, and the podcast I'm a guest on right now is a great source of this as well. But learn and grow and actually do the stuff, the resources, the books, the podcasts are telling you to do. Because sometimes when you're reading, it kind of feels like, oh, I read this book. Man, what a great accomplishment that was. And now it's done. Well, okay, no, that's great. That is incredible that you read that book. But that's only the beginning. Now you have to actually implement it. So that is that in time. That's how I was able to find this clarity.
Good, solid advice. And no, I know you weren't teasing me, but for people that have listened and watched, I did read a book a day for nearly 6 years. But there's an end to that story, and I think I shared this with you. I was consuming so much content that there was not my ambition wasn't equaling my action. And I said it differently, but that's what you said. Is like, hey, if you're reading that much, then there's no way to implement what you're reading. And so thank you, Evan, for just saying that in a different way. It's such an important topic. There's so much information in the world that we live in today that if you're just grabbing these little snippets and you're not putting any of it into practice, then it's going to be really challenging to get to where you want to go. So I'm glad you brought that up, and it's a really important point. And I think it's one as aspiring leaders or leaders in the world, as entrepreneurs, we're trying to make a difference in the world, trying to create an impact, right? And so when we're doing that, it's an important reminder for us to pause and really get some depth rather than just breadth. And so great points, Evan. I appreciate you. All right. Enough business for today. Look, we work to live, not live to work, right? So important. So that's the reason why I asked this question. I'm really interested to know, Evan, what's the most fun vacation you've ever had?
I love that question, honestly. And when I saw that was one of the questions that you were going to be asking me, I thought that was a very unique question. And honestly, difficult to answer because I was fortunate enough. Another shout out to my wonderful mom. I was fortunate enough to do a lot of traveling with my family growing up, which was so much fun. But it is when you're under 18, when you're a child, you don't have as much control over your experiences. So I'd say my favorite two main travel experiences I've had in the last year or so, last year and a half or so, maybe last year, 2 years, because I'm an adult now, and that have been my personal favorites. I'd say number one, when I moved, actually, typically you think moving isn't a fun vacation, but I moved from Atlanta, Georgia, here back to my hometown here in Sacramento, California. I had a car and I drove. I had a friend who lives here in Sacramento fly out, meet me in Atlanta. We did the drive back together, and it was so much fun because we'd wake up that morning and be like, all right, where are we going to stop today? I don't know. Let's figure it out on the road. And so we just start driving and we just stopped wherever we stopped. And it was a lot of fun. And I'd say my other favorite vacation was some of my friends and I went down to LA back in August. I know a lot about LA. It kind of feels like home adjacent because I lived in West Hollywood for a few years back. But we did a trip down there because I wanted to see some concerts in the Hollywood Bowl, which was so much fun. I saw the Marvel movie Black Panther live to concert. I saw
Nice.
Tower of Power, and I saw Ziggy Marley. And it was all out in the open because even though the Hollywood Bowl, right, it's the outdoor theater. Oh man, it was stunning. It was beautiful, and I was down there for my birthday as well. And we made a whole week out of it, and we did a bunch of different things, explored the area. It was a lot of fun. So I'd say those were my two favorite vacations.
Love it. Sounds exciting. Nothing like a road trip. So that sounds like a lot of fun, and especially from one side of the country to the other. I've made
Yeah.
trips like that, and I really enjoy it. So when you're not rushed and you're trying to push it all in, 20 hours or whatever,
Oh yeah.
I think
It's
it's like
freedom.
30 hours.
That's the point of being
Yeah.
an entrepreneur, right? Is that freedom, and I could do it because I was an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I didn't have to beg my boss for that time off.
That's great. And I'm not as familiar with LA. I've been a couple times, but I got an event or two coming up in LA, so I know who I'll be looking up to show me around.
It is a beautiful beautiful city. I
I,
highly recommend everybody to visit.
I appreciate
Yeah.
you, Evan. Look, thanks for being on. I really appreciate it. I know you took a part out of your day to come on the podcast and share so genuinely and so kindly and authentically. And I know those are buzzwords, but I really mean it. So thank you very much for taking a piece of your day to be able to serve people. When somebody watches this and they see who you are and they listen to this and they say, I have to reach out to that guy. I definitely want a podcast. I have a podcast. I don't want to manage this anymore. It's not really all that fun for me. I want somebody else to handle it. Or they just think you're a genuine guy and they want to reach out and connect. What's the best way for them to do that? Is there a website or social media? What's the best way for them to reach you, Evan?
I appreciate you for highlighting that and giving me this opportunity to share that. I've got a website, path2podcastsuccess.com. And however, the very, very best way, if you really want to talk to me, I am Evan Johnson on Facebook and Instagram. And I'm always checking my messages. That's where I live. That is where I primarily communicate with all my clients and friends. And so, if you would like to have a conversation, um, that the best way is via social media, and I always try to leave the people I talk to with some kind of value, even if we don't work together. So hopefully, if don't be shy. I am here. I am here for you. I being of service, like I've been talking about. It's how I do business. That's what I do. And I want to say that I appreciate you, Brad, for giving me this opportunity to be on the other side of the mic, be the guest on a podcast. It is always so much fun. And so I just really, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for allowing me to be a guest on your podcast.
I humbly receive that. Thank you. It's truly my pleasure. Evan, thank you so much. This is Brad A. Milford with the Unlimited Business Wisdom Podcast, where business owners making, here we go, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 figures. Look, there's a lot of talk about that on the internet, but it's not really all about the money. It's about sharing. I mean, some of it is, but it's about sharing their wisdom.
Money is nice.
Indeed, it is. Sharing their wisdom and creating global impact. And remember, there's unity in community. Thanks for joining us.